Hi, welcome back to my channel. So I literally tried to film a video out here the other day because I'd officially made the choice that I didn't really give a fuck if people think I'm weird filming out in public, talking to myself, because I've done it that many times on my podcast. And also something I've noticed when I've been filming my podcast is how fucking annoying people are in passive, like, what's the word? Like non-verbal communication. Like you can literally have the monopoly on not talking to a narcissist and getting them to leave you the fuck alone. You've still got to like verbally like non-verbally communicate with them, and it's such a fucking joke and a fucking time. So I'm gonna sit here and quite frankly just take away from any narcissistic supply that I possibly can, to be honest. It really don't bother me whatsoever. So yeah. Or something much less bitter. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about, in true style of myself and my personality, something extremely vulnerable for me and something probably not necessarily appropriate to be talking about in the part. I mean, I would say appropriate, but also maybe something that some people probably would not look to do because of just being embarrassed, but clearly embarrassment just doesn't come easily to me. So yeah, in fact I find it quite funny, to be honest, because I just watch everyone else embarrass themselves all the time and they don't seem to give a fuck, so why the fuck should I? Yeah, so anyway, what was I going to say? So yeah, I wanted to talk about, I've literally, did I do a video on this recently? Yes, I did a whole video when I was feeling like this in the other day. I am not sure if I posted it or not, I honestly can't remember, and it was more to do with like body image, but we're going to do a different video probably based around that, but not necessarily completely based on that as a topic. It's going to be around my issues with disordered eating, because that was my diagnosis that came to when I eventually had that. Prior to having mental health problems, that was my diagnosis. A lot of my friends had full-blown eating disorders that were like diagnosed anorexia and stuff like that. I did have bulimic tendencies for a while as well, but we're going to talk about it because it's not something that I've thought about for quite a while actually, and I don't know, I think stress actually is something, and also just processing a lot of like childhood wounds and stuff has actually triggered me off into sort of just like, not necessarily like, because people say you can deal with that shit forever, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm very much a believer of like you can recover from mental illness. I don't know what the but like when you look at clinical illnesses and stuff, you know, you have to like take it for what resonates with you, because some people say like you can't be cured from depression, do you know what I mean? And it's like, yes you can, and stuff like that. So you have to, and anxiety and stuff, like I've improved my anxiety, I still have it, but you can definitely like work on stuff. And I feel like I'm like, for that, like it's never even been something that has crossed my mind for quite a few years, but I feel like, or like not really, but I was like medicated for like part of that time, and then I was like pregnant for part of that time as well. So the thing is with these medications is that they kind of slow down your metabolism, they fuck up your metabolism, and they really just like kind of change your sort of body physiology to a degree. And it really fucked me off, because in the first sort of like 3 months or something of taking one of these medications, I literally put on like 1.5 stone, and it was really uncomfortable for me. But I think partially that was just because of like social conditioning, like having this like just being stuck in narcissistic conditioning to a degree. And I think that's a massive part actually of this sort of like side of life. Like I'm going to jump to the whole thing of like, I think it is possible to like fully recover from it, I just do, because not only, I feel like I've seen it in people as well, like on YouTube and stuff, I've seen videos and passing and stuff of people like advocating for this side of things, because they say, oh, you know, I used to struggle with this issue and I've really like, they like literally, you can tell like they know the ins and outs of it, they know where they went. Right, so sorry, my memory always cuts out, so I have to always delete videos, but yeah, just understanding the roots of it usually is, I think, where these people kind of come from when they're sort of posting these videos and stuff. or like they're like advocates or whatever. And you know, and that's where I always think, because I've literally recovered from other like mental illness, and I know how possible it is, and how like the illness I had was literally just an immune system. It's like any person's like, people have predisposition, like shit shows up in people's lives in so many different ways, and let's not like go so deep into that. Sometimes it manifests as mental illness in some people, and it does run in my family, but the way that shit got triggered and set off was because it was like a natural reaction from my built physiology in the circumstances I was given, you know what I mean, with the amount of stress and actual intrafamilial child trauma I experienced, and other life experiences that I don't want to talk about, and medications that stuff, and I don't know, I took Reactine, which is really bad for your mental health, and I don't even want to go into that now. But I would say, fully recovered from that, and have been in full recovery from that for a long time. Like, I literally went into remission like 3 weeks after having mental illness. But as someone that has recovered from I would say more complex mental illness than this, I would say, having like, this is kind of a step down, even though I can't tell you, like, I was literally thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, it is such a horrible thing to have tendencies towards this side of experience, you know, with issues around this side of things. It's literally it's so paralyzing, and it's so dreadful. But then I'm like, how awful must life have been? And tangibly looking at the evidence of what the fuck I experienced, even though I can't actually remember a lot of it, it was so chronic and horrendous to what I'd actually been going through. So I feel like it's just like the body's like somewhat natural, and the mind's like natural like comeback to experiencing something so dreadful and chronic, to like almost like you're in a parent to some degree, even though you're a child, or like you're just your logical brain kind of demonstrating to you what you're experiencing, when sometimes you might not even be conscious of it. Do you know what I mean? Or the universe, because you attract what you are. So if you are someone that and it's literally even what you're going through, you attract what you are. Like, if you are someone, or you attract what you're used to as well. If you're someone that's going through chronic narcissistic abuse and has this horrible, with lots of intrafamilial child torture and narcissism in caregivers and stuff, and, you know, neglectful and shitty abusive parents, you're going to show up potentially with something like this as a manifestation, one could argue, as an understanding of what the fuck you'd actually been experiencing. You know, it's something as well that I notice is something, the reason like you can go so out of control with it is because it goes so out of your grasp after a while. Like, it's something that you start to feed, but after a while you sort of lose control of the way it's manifesting. But it's like, if you feed anything in your life and it gives you some sort of reward system, it's like drugs. It is literally like drugs. You know, you have a drug, and the drug is like dopamine. It's a reward system, because you're basically you're lacking this validation, from like a mental level. This is just my thoughts on it, and it may resonate with someone or it may not. But I feel like, because I'm not a psychologist, but from my own this is literally from my hindsight, I wasn't treated for very long for it, simply because my narcissistic parent thought it wasn't worth it. So even though the psychologist rang them up and said, oh, it'll be good for me to go back and have more sessions to help me with it, which may not have meant that I would have manifested into full-blown mental illness, which I did, which rendered me incapacitated for a while over time, they were like, oh no, it doesn't matter. So anyway, that was just great demonstration of the evil that goes on in this planet. Should you even call it evil? I don't know. Anyway, and it, as I say, it's something that you lose control of after a while. And I feel like it's kind of like the universe and stuff demonstrating to you the way you're out of control in these experiences, where people try and take your control and your power. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what a narcissist does. They will take, especially to children, they will try and take all of the power and control that they possibly can. There's one thing to say, oh yeah, children, you know, haven't got the capability to have control. But this is something I'm seeing, is like, how are you supposed to make a child independent for themselves? There's that balance, I suppose, isn't there, of taking control from a child for things that they can't do. But it's also, you want to be teaching them how to do shit themselves, especially when it comes to having peace of mind and sound mind. Do you know what I mean? And this is something that someone with a personality disorder like narcissism simply can't do. Do you know what I mean? They are literally rendered, you know, they literally can't see other people be happy or thrive in any way. Do you know what I mean? And it's chronic. So I feel like this is potentially the universe manifesting an experience that very much on a logistic level matches the experience that someone's possibly going through. And this is why it affects so many teenagers over people in adulthood. But I'm finding as an adult, these sort of things that I'd experienced is kind of, it's almost like a fail-safe to one degree or another. I feel like a fail-safe coping strategy is not a good thing. It's an unhealthy coping strategy that I had for a lot of time to feel like I'm gaining control. So when I don't know what has brought it into my psychology, but I think this just does happen. Your brain shows you shit when you're able to cope with it. Do you know what I mean? It was something that brought me a lot of stress. But my life outside was stressful anyway. It was less stressful for me to focus on this side of things than it was to not. Do you know what I mean? You know, back when I used to genuinely engage in these behaviours, and it's like, you know, and I feel like people still do it, and this is why it's important to be an advocate. Do you know what I mean? I feel like, I mean, as I say, how many, you know, lives am I going to change? But I do feel like when you've gone through something, talk the fuck about it so you can help the next person, because there's enough people being fucked over and mugged off by the next Tom, Dick and Harry that walks past you. Do you know what I mean? And it's just not, it's not okay. And it's like, if you're not going to get anyone that's going to actually be an example of what the fuck is the actual right way to do something, you know, you're not actually going to get very far in life, and a lot of people are going to fail. Do you know what I mean? I think I've had so much sort of guidance from people in the past of, you know, in situations where I've not had any clue how to navigate something, but seeing someone else in that situation, it gives you a lot of validation sometimes. You know, I'm just trying to think now. So, I don't know. I think there's something about as well, and I have to liken it to narcissistic abuse, because I feel like this is the way that it seems to be experienced for me. As I look at the logistics between how, it's literally raining again. Why does this always happen to me when I start talking to myself in the park? Oh my god, this is so chronic. Really? Oh, it's decided to stop. We'll see how it goes. I think it is going to rain. Is it going to rain? It's almost like the universe doesn't want me to talk to myself in the park.
And then we both get grounded. What about someone grounded at the same time kind of went grounded?
Right, stop. So anyway, I think, but yeah, yeah, when you look at the correlation, there's a lot of like loss of control, and there's a lot of like there's this sense of like really wanting to like isolate as well, and be like within your own mind and control something of your own, and like sort of and like to go into your Delulu energy, which are all healthy things. But it's like, as you say, if you're surrounded by a fuck ton of toxic people that honestly are obsessed with attention, it's like, of course you're going to want to seek out somewhere where you've got your own space and where you've got your own place to express yourself and do something with a passion that you care about, even if it's something that's actually toxic and detrimental to you. Do you know what I mean? But the need for that is stronger than the actual harm that it's doing. Do you know what I mean? But it's like finding a supplement, like replacing that to a degree, and it's much more complicated than this, especially if you're in the depths of this sort of thing. And as I say, this is years and years later. I'm 26. I used to struggle with this shit when I was like 13, 14, 15, 16. Do you know what I mean? But it's still like the conditioning is still there. But I feel like as an advocate, it's like there is a lot and I would call myself a wannabe advocate this time. I want to say to some degree I am. It's something that I haven't spoken about in depth a lot on my channel, just because it's something that I have literally not had the clarity on to be able to do. I can kind of say, oh yeah, I struggled a little bit for a while, and you know, then I took medication and I was sort of like went back to normal. I'm sorry, because you gain the weight. It's the same thing with narcissistic abuse. You can literally be normal, you can be physically healthy and physically average, but mentally you can still have issues with it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you can find, I feel like the crux are in narcissistic abuse and neglect and abuse to one degree or another, because you are, in essence as well, it's like the universe bringing, or your psychology showing, I'm going to go from the level of the universe to just give away that. And this is why you shouldn't blame yourself either, because it's like the universe is genuinely bringing you, if you're chronically neglected, it's almost like the universe bringing you this chronic neglect within your like physical nutrition. Do you know what I mean? It's how it manifests, and I know that I chose to manifest it that way, but it would have manifested one way or another anyway. Do you know what I mean? And some people that shit would have manifested in other ways, but for me it was through a mental illness, because it is a mental illness. Well, I don't know if the diagnosis I had was mental illness at this time. It was I mean, it would be under the category of, but the way I was presented, like, that was how I coped. Do you know what I mean? And how the universe manifested that for me, you know. And it's something to take away from it, because I feel like if you are going to just like move forward from this and you have the observations, it's important to be like, yes, like obviously this, and to validate your inner child, because your inner child never dies. This is the thing as well, and I've got this real disconnection with my inner child, because I associate, for a good reason to be honest, but that I associate that period of my life with something so stressful and something so unbearable, and something that eventually would lead to my mental illness and mental collapse. Talk about fucking narcissistic collapse. Yeah. And there's good reason why I don't really connect to that side, but my psychology is obviously showing it up for me. And it's like, you know, some people do say that you struggle with this for life, but I say, it's like, I genuinely think you can fully come out of it. And it's just, it's like one of those things where I feel like it's going to manifest differently for different people, and this is why it's such a touchy subject. And I feel like for people that are in the depths of it, I honestly would only just advocate going to find some help, because I think the way that thing, like, I'm not going to give advice where advice I don't know how to give it, but I can talk about my experiences. And I'm just trying to think what else was the goal from that. And there's just something as well to like get excited about. It's so weird. It sounds distorted, and it is, and it comes from a real lack mindset. But I feel like as well, if you're surrounded by people that don't want your excitement, they don't want your joy, they don't want you to have preparation for joy, they don't want you to come prepared, you know, they don't want you to have excitement, you know, it's something stupid, it's something detrimental, not stupid, I would say detrimental to be excited about. Because a lot of the time I feel like at the beginning as well, it can disguise itself as like a health journey, and it ends up not being for a lot of people. And I feel like this, to some degree or another, is almost it's either something for a narcissist to try and sabotage, but sometimes they can kind of justify it because, and this is how people kind of get around narcissists to one degree as well, because they can kind of justify it because they can be like, oh, you know, I can use this person as my like success story, like, wow, do you know what I mean, my daughter is so healthy, you know, and like, wow, like she looks so good, blah blah blah, and they can use that as supply. So they often will kind of back it to one degree or another. But at the end of the day, it's just something that often snowballs, because it starts to become something else that a narcissist can manipulate. They'll probably start to, again, like anything that they perceive as positive within your life, it may well start from a positive place. You know, there's nothing wrong with being, you know, going down that sort of a route. But as I say, they will try and fuck up anything they possibly can. So, and they'll try and just like commandeer it as like their own personal sort of game. Do you know what I mean? Because and obviously they do generally have the monopoly over children to one degree or another, because children are vulnerable. They have honestly no clue, and it's like a lot of people who are, you know, because they're perpetually children. They're on an emotional level. you know, it's like that they discount actual like the development of all people as something that's irrelevant, because they're just like, oh, just get on with it. Do you know what I mean? Just like, oh, whatever, because they have to live in that childhood state all the time. But that doesn't take away from the fact people actually have to all go through development. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't take away from that by universal truth. But as I say, it's like, I think there is a lot of alignment. I've been trying to do some like past life regressions as well to see if I can sort of like put some puzzle pieces together or some degree. I don't know whether like in a past life I had some sort of like really poor nutrition, or I don't know, like I feel like that sort of stuff always heals me from like any level. So I look at that as well. But I think in the tangible in this lifetime, I can only assume, if you believe in that sort of shit, I can only assume that a lot of it lines up to narcissism and to being abused by a narcissist and to trying to take control from that. And it appears to be simple, and if you have some level of understanding of narcissism, it appears to be simple, but then it becomes something of itself, and I cannot describe how absolutely horrendous it is when you're in the depths of that sort of shit, and it's really horrible. So that's why I wanted to start talking about it. I feel like that's pretty much all I want to say, but yeah, ongoingly, like there are literally groups that I would consider going to at this time, only because I've got the clinical diagnosis, so I can go, but it's not something I really like actively struggle with. It's just been something that's came up for me as something I used to struggle with. As I say, I will keep an eye on it, because I think, as I say, I started to talk about, I think it can be generational sometimes, when you've just got this like perpetuation through generations of like these unhealthy controlling schemas based on inadequacy. But then when this is passed to someone, I think that is part of it as well, though, because you've got a narcissistic parent that's got this chronic inadequacy and this chronic poor self-esteem for various reasons. Probably they aren't the most attractive person in the world, and they are shown that from generation to generation, whatever, as the case may be. And it's like, you know, that is then perpetuated down through generations, and on top of like more ongoing narcissism, you're going to really have to beat the odds to one degree or another. You've not really got, and a lot of people don't, that's the thing, and that's why these sort of manifestations to whatever degree will emerge. And it's like, you know, there's that element as well. Because then if you're still in active like contact with like a narcissist or whatever, and you've got, or like you know, a detrimental family member or something, like they'll still perpetuate this shit, and it will be their form of control, and it will be their form of abuse, to keep perpetuating narratives like this. But they can actually perpetuate them themselves as well, or it can just be a whole group narcissism issue. Do you know what I mean? Which can also be the case. And I would say if any, you know, quote unquote blood tie or whatever is engaging in that shit, they're not worth being in your space, because they're not healthy people. So, but it's like, it's a shitty thing, because it's like, if that's all you know from a level, from a childhood level, maybe you haven't had a spiritual awakening, you don't engage with things like past lives, you haven't got the worldliness to see other people's viewpoints and stuff. If this is all you know, it's actually just a very dangerous place to be, isn't it? Because you've obviously, and that is the nature of gaslighting and all that kind of stuff. Because then as well, you know, it's a massive thing that I try and recover from, is like, as I say, and I spoke about this in my self-esteem video, which I don't honestly know if I posted or not, but the amount of shit that comes out my system when I'm doing my journaling and stuff, and that just like ongoingly bullshit, blatant lies and absolute false truths that come out when I'm trying to write that shit down, is absolutely it's absolutely chronic. And I genuinely don't, but like, it's not true. Do you know what I mean? When you write it down, it's just like, oh my god, I have no idea. I mean, I could take a wild guess at where this in programming came from, but it's genuinely not true. Definitely in universal truth, it's genuinely not true. Like, I am not I'm trying to think something that I want to share that's come out in the journaling, but like, the worst person in the world, do you know what I mean? But that sort of shit is the type of shit that comes out in my journaling, and it's like, logically, I'm not the worst person in the world. It's not something I consciously believe, but somewhere in my conditioning, that's what my inner child is trying to tell me. And it's also like, even if it's like, it can be part of your conditioning, and it often will be, but I also think sometimes it's just your inner child not actually knowing, like feeling like they've had this sort of conditioning, but also to be able to like grab your inner child and actually be like, no, it's okay to have self-esteem. That sort of toxic shit was injected in you by a very, very unwell person. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is not something that you need to continue moving forward. And you can actually let that shit go. Do you know what I mean? And let them go off and destroy themselves. Who gives a fuck? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, it's really, really powerful energy work. And I just think, I don't know, I obviously, as I say, this is why I won't talk about how to recover from it, because I'm not a psychologist, and I feel like clinical services cannot be substituted for, and sometimes they are necessary, and I honestly wish I would have had that intervention earlier. But I think there is also a reason why you do have to be clinically in a certain spectrum on a physical level, just because there is probably so much demand for this type of shit, because I think a lot of people actually struggle with self-esteem to one degree or another. And, you know, and this is why you get this narrative around a lot of communities and stuff of like, oh, it started as a health journey, like I'm well enough type of thing, because they don't get the support. But I think it's really dangerous when you get an ongoing, well, as I say, a lot of people can handle it themselves. I did end up getting that help because I was eating, like, anyway, I don't want to say triggering things to people, because I think it is triggering, and sometimes, especially if you're in the active phase of it, and that's not something I want to do. But yeah, I'm not going to ramble anymore, because God only knows how long this video is, but I definitely feel like there's more to talk about. So thanks for listening.